So we went through all these. I mean, it's a whole bunch of people I met with personally. Now, there are people out there who say they're doing stuff with disclosure and lobbying, but they've actually never met with a sitting member of Congress. I'm not going to name names, but that's it. That's what I did for 10 years, from 92 and 3 until 01 and beyond. And also people overseas. The cabinet level member of the Japanese government in charge of science and technology briefed him, very interested. But when I said, will Japan take the lead on disclosure and put this material together? He says, oh no, we can't do it ahead of the United States. He was in terror of the idea of getting ahead of these covert programs. Same thing with meeting with certain members of the royal families in Europe that I met with. And as you know, I provided a big briefing that was given to Prince Charles by Jamie Cromwell, the actor who played. He said he was kind of playing me in this movie, First Contact, a Star Trek movie. And Jamie Cromwell, they had the opening in London, and Prince Charles came and wanted this briefing we were putting together for the president. And so Jamie Cromwell handed it to him. And I got a lovely note back from Prince Charles about this. But not that Charles could do anything about this issue, but they were interested. There's so much interest. But the people, even if they're in very high positions, they're interested, and now they're known to be briefed, but they have no power over the operations. So as I said over an hour ago, don't conflate knowledge of the issue with access control. Access control is in these unacknowledged special access projects. So that led me to doing something very controversial. And there's my military people said, look, there's a way that we do things in the military, and it's called a UNOD letter, unless otherwise directed. What that means is you write to various people in command and say, unless otherwise directed, here's my assessment and here's what I'm going to do. So they said to legally cover yourself, you need to do a UNOD letter and send it to the head of the Justice Department, the President, the Pentagon, the CIA, the FBI, the whole alphabet soup, the NSA, and we send it return receipt requested so you can prove it was received. And I did that. And that's also in the first book, Extraterrestrial Contact, the Evidence and Implications. And it said, it basically said, you can read it, it's up on our website, here is our assessment. These projects are being run illegally. They are unacknowledged special access projects that have been unconstitutional since the 50s. The President and other key figures we know have been lied to, as have the oversight committees of the Congress. Similar crisis exists in the United Kingdom and other countries where I have had briefings. Therefore, it is our assessment that the National Security Act and secrecy laws that are attached to oaths of secrecy are null and void, and that any man or woman who has knowledge in any document, material, or evidence attached to the UFO and extraterrestrial issue can be provided and disclosed publicly without penalty of law. This is our assessment, and unless otherwise directed, beginning as soon as we can organize it, we will proceed with disclosing this testimony and these documents. This was what we used to legally cover all 110 top secret military witnesses that came forward. It had to be done. And the reason I couldn't have done that between 93 and 98, I had to go through this torture chamber of finding out that in fact, and proving not only to myself, for posterity and in my records, that the key people who should know about this do not. And therefore, the programs are illegal. And therefore, if the programs are themselves illegal, they can't cite the law. It's basic constitutional law. If you're operating, if you're a mafia, let's say that a mafia guy's running an illegal project and you enter into a contract with him. That contract is vitiated, nullified, is completely zeroed out because the underlying operation is illegal. So all these men and women who have been at Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, who have been with the CIA, the DIA, the Pentagon, who have worked on these projects, we basically exonerated them from any legal penalties for disclosing information about these projects because we were able to prove they were being run unconstitutionally. And therefore, the National Security Act could not be applied. Does everyone understand what I'm just describing? That was the basis for the Disclosure Project of May 2001. And we had to do that because I talked to Danny Sheehan, who is a constitutional attorney who did the Silkwood case, represented the New York Times and the Pentagon Papers, and he was helping me pro bono on this. I ran this idea by him. So I had my military guys advise me on the UNOD letter, the unless otherwise directed letter, but then I talked to some legal constitutional experts and say, is this a sound legal assessment? Because I'm just a doctor. I know anything about this stuff. And he said, absolutely. If these projects are being run illegally, they cannot then have it both ways. They either have to be under proper oversight and control of the President and the Congress, or they have opted themselves out of the legal system, and therefore they cannot use the legal system to prosecute any of our witnesses or me for having disclosed top secret documents that have not been declassified, which I have done. Now, that's a very big difference from what Snowden did. Snowden disclosed things that were being overseen by the President and were being overseen by the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence and the House Intelligence Committee. And even though those programs are Big Brother-esque and outrageous, he really should have limited his disclosure, if he's listening, to operations that were unacknowledged and illegal. You see, if he had done that, he would not be in legal trouble. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? He just didn't know. He was young, and he'd had very bad advisors. The journalists and people who were working with him didn't understand the system well. So anyone listening who wants to be a whistleblower, listen to me, contact me before you jump off that plank. Because you must only disclose the projects that are USAPs, unacknowledged, and which are unacknowledged to the level that even upon directed inquiry by the key people in the Congress, the Pentagon, the CIA, and the President, they're still lying to them. So those programs then are rogue and illegal. Those you can disclose. And if you can prove that, then you're free sailing. Now, that's what we did. So from '98 until 2000, we gathered together more and more and more of these top secret military people and others. And I went all around the world and interviewed them. There's several dozen of them up on our website at SiriusDisclosure.com, SIRIUS Disclosure.com. Their testimony is a book that we put together called Disclosure. Some of it. I mean, it's so voluminous. To give you an idea, I had 110 hours of testimony that I had to cut down to the 4-hour and 2-hour DVDs that you can get on our website. There's so much material. So it's unbelievable amount of material that that's on digital film. I mean, honestly, I did most of the filming, so it's not professional because I'm a klutz with cameras, but that's all. We didn't have the funding to do this, like a big project. We just did it. It was all, by the way, the Disclosure Project had no paid staff, no office, all volunteers working in our spare time. All of it. So that's how it got done. And it still is how it's happening. So I think that people have to understand that, we did the best we could with what we had. It wasn't like we had a $5 million grant or a $10 million grant to do this. We had a couple $100,000 to travel the world, interview all these people, and launch it at the National Press Club, which became the biggest event in the history of the National Press Club since Ronald Reagan was there. And at the time that we did the May 9th, 2001 event, it was the most watched event in the history of the internet, the entire internet. And the company that hosts the internet broadcasts out of the National Press Club said they had so many people trying to see it, it crashed their system. And that Bill Gates and others were watching this because they had never seen that many people trying to get on to see it. They had to grab every T1 line in Washington at the old system. Now you can handle it, but they couldn't handle it in 2001. And it was all in the media. Eventually about 800 million people around the world saw it. But then one by one, the media were contacted and told, take this down, take this down, take this down. 4 months later, 9/11 happened. But in the course of all of this, I've learned a lot. But you know, one of the things I've learned is that you cannot expect people in power to bite the hand that feeds them. It's like the old 9 Inch Nails song. Will they bite the hand that feeds them? And the answer is usually not. And the other thing is that the currency that matters is, it's not impressive if you're a billionaire. I know a lot of billionaires. It's not impressive if you have a law degree from Harvard. It's not impressive if daddy left you $10 billion. It's not impressive if you're the president of the United States, if you're not willing to do the right things for the people of the world and of the United States and have the courage to do it. Now, that one word, courage, comes from heart, from the French. Do you have the heart and the courage to do it? That's what's been missing. Because for the most part, our politicians and our attorneys, most politicians are lawyers, they come up in a system where it's self-aggrandizing, naked ambition. And most people in the corporate world and in the political world are not going to do something that could be an enormously dangerous thing for themselves personally and could ruin their careers by being associated with it. And that's why I concluded by 2000 that the people have to do it. We, the people, have to do that. Now, one of the real other issues that came up recently was, have there been people who, over a period of time, been trying to work this within the system? Yes. There's a senior official at the CIA who, for 20 years, has been very, very supportive. He's part of that group, but he's on the side of disclosure. But he can't stick his neck out too far because he saw what happened to former CIA Director Colby. When he stuck his neck out, he was going to give Bill Colby, the CIA director, I think for Ford and Nixon, was going to hand off one of these zero-point free energy devices and about $50 million in seed money so we could get it out to the public. And the week he was going to meet with a member of my board, they found him floating down the Potomac River. Almost absolutely was assassinated. We can't prove it, but his best friend, a colonel, met with me and said, yes, that's what happened, and he knew it was a risk. So a lot of people who are friendly to this, who are on the inside, are afraid of being tweaked, terminated with extreme prejudice. And then you have other people who aren't on the inside, who don't have the courage of the ridicule factor, because the New York Times and the Washington Post, the big media outfits that are wholly owned subsidiaries of the intelligence community, frankly, when it comes to this issue, are going to absolutely roast and ridicule any politician that brings up the word UFO. It has to be done like on Kimmel, you know, just sort of ha ha ha, make a joke of it. So in 1953, the CIA decided that the psychological warfare aspects of this would be where the real enforcement could be, by just making it ridiculous. And they actually engaged, I have a document that proves this, Disney Studios, to make cartoons about little green men so that it would become the laughingstock and sort of defang the whole issue into sort of silliness. And so it has remained for 60 years. So it takes a lot of courage, not just in terms of your personal safety, but your reputation, because you're going to be ridiculed and laughed out of meetings, or you're going to be teased. And most people don't want to be ridiculed. I'm just the kind of person, I don't care what someone says about me. I mean, everything terrible you can imagine has been said about me, and so what? I mean, you just expect it. So, but most people in a public eye don't want to do that. And so disclosure is going to have to be with the people. So we initiated that in 2001, and we continue to do that. And I think that the biggest problem we've had, and I wrote a paper about this called When Disclosure Serves Secrecy. Now, this paper, I wish you would read it and memorize it. Everything I predicted in that a long time ago, it's on our website. And if you sign up for our email service, we occasionally send it out. It's a free newsletter. You can just sign up. It's at seriousdisclosure.com. It's free. It's completely provided to the public. That paper describes the dangers of doing what we've done. And that is disclosure being hijacked by charlatans who masquerade as disclosure folks, who attach to all the body of evidence I put together the fear factor and the silly season and the evil aliens are coming to eat us for lunch. Yeah. All right? And that has happened. And the betrayals I will not go into because it will break your heart. So the truth is, the thing that keeps me up most at night is all this information being folded into which is all solid information, being folded into disinformation that's tailored to scare the public into what General MacArthur said, and that is World War III will be interplanetary. So now let me talk about the deepest USAP. The deepest unacknowledged special access project is the one that is tasked with doing the psychological propaganda, just like Hitler did with his program, for convincing the people that there's a threat that we should fight. This was launched in the 50s and 60s. First they made the subject ridiculous, and then they made it terrifying, like the movie Independence Day. And this was all part of a plan hatched in the 50s to be sure that we could continue to grow the military-industrial complex, but instead of just one country, sort of a unipolar expenditure out of mainly the United States and at that time Soviet Union, it'd be a global junta military effort because there's a threat from outer space. And they have done about 50 years, 60 years of very, very careful preparation. Now, the UFO subculture is replete with the influence of that. Most people don't understand it. And I wasn't surprised when I got a document in the 1990s from the Strategic Studies Institute describing this project. And this is going to be in our next film, if I can find a director that wants to make this film. And it describes creating a worldwide subculture and cult around alien abductions using stagecraft, I'm quoting, and using advanced aerospace devices, i.e. man-made UFOs, anti-gravities, with creatures that could pass as aliens to engage in events to scare people so that the public could be turned to believe that there's one or more civilizations that we should unite against and fight. And Ronald Reagan at the United Nations literally said, wouldn't our job of creating a unified world be easier if we had a common alien threat? This is, you can Google this clip of Reagan saying this. So that agenda and the Star Wars programs that go with it, and 90+% of all UFO subculture books, movies, conferences are infected with that virus. Now, I'm saying unwittingly in many cases, because how would you know? If you haven't been read into a program that is so sensitive, and I've had physicists who worked at the Dulce complex and at the Pine Gap complex in Australia, where they manufacture these what are called programmed life forms, these things that look like aliens that are 100% man-made, have integrated circuits in their neural complex, but they're biologicals, and they're on board these. But the people running the craft are military or corporate guys. And they'll sick these things on people, and they'll abduct them and put an implant in them. And the implants are made by EG&G. They're on the edge of the Nellis Range.